day by day. Oh, dear Lord, three things I pray: to see Thee more clearly, love Thee more dearly, follow Thee more nearly, day by day. To see You more clearly, love You more dearly, follow You more nearly,
About 30 years ago, at this same time of year in the early fall, around the time of the equinox, when the seasons were changing, I literally lost my daughter. We were at the Common Ground Fair, my husband, our 2-year-old daughter, and my mother, who had come along to help. I realized that I'm the same age now that my mother was then. I was scheduled that day to volunteer at the Midwives of Maine booth. Now the fair, the Common Ground Fair, is a huge fair in the state of Maine, and it covers acres of Maine farmland with fabulous food, all kinds of animals and artists and craftspeople and musicians and dancers and gardeners, soap sellers, knitters, spinners, weavers, you name it. And after wandering through the rows of rabbits and admiring the pigs, we found our booth and decided that my mom and I would keep Sophia while Rick would be the first to go explore the fair on his own. So we set up the table and we settled in, and I talked to the passersby about natural birth. Sometimes large groups of people would stop by and we'd get into conversation with them, and it wasn't too long after one of those big groups had stopped and stayed that Rick came back from his wandering, eager to tell us about what he'd learned about composting and companion planting. And he was reaching around to show us where those teachers were, and wandering across our little area, our little booth, our Midwives of Maine booth, and he interrupted himself to say, "Well, where's Sophia?" "What do you mean?" I said. "Where is Sophia?" my mom said, starting to look outside of our tented area. We couldn't see her anywhere. She wasn't with us in the booth, and so Rick started walking quickly back and forth up and down our row, asking if anyone had seen a determined little 2-year-old describing her clothes. He shouted her name. Word of mouth brought security to our booth, and they started looking for her too: purple parka, blue mud boots. Now behind our booth, our row of booths, was one of the biggest tents of the whole fair, with one of the main stages. I don't know how long it took, but slowly scanning the stadium seating way up in the back, a few rows from the top, Rick finally saw our little Sophia. Our little 2-year-old Sophia sitting all alone, listening to the music, head bopping to the beat. He went and sat down next to her. She was safe. She didn't even know she was lost. In fact, it felt more like she was found and was finding an important piece of herself. I can see now in hindsight. Soon enough, Rick brought her back to us, and we kept a closer eye on her for the rest of the day. But I wonder sometimes what called her away from us. Now, of course, it was the music, but what happened inside her that made her climb so far across those open beams high up into a seat where she settled herself down just to listen? And I wonder sometimes, too, what compels you to find your way here into this sanctuary, and you online on Roku and Zoom and Facebook. What compels you to show up? And I wonder how difficult or easy a climb it's been to get here. A first-time visitor last week told me that the hardest part was getting herself out of her car. What inspires you to log on or to register or to introduce yourself to each other online? And if an answer is coming up inside of you right now, please share it online with each other. What made you log on this morning? You didn't have to, but you chose to. Was it an intuition? Was it an invitation, a longing, a loneliness? There is a difference, of course, between being called and being pushed. My daughter Sophia did ask to play the violin when she was 3, and she started lessons when she was almost 5. And before her feet could reach the floor, she was playing first violin in the Maine State Children's Orchestra. But she doesn't play these days anymore. And I wondered later if my pushing didn't paradoxically place obstacles in the way of her natural unfolding path. Our deepest calling is to grow into our own authentic selfhood, whether or not it conforms to some image of who we ought to be. As we do so, we will not only find the joy that every human seeks, we will also find our path of authentic service in the world. True vocation joins self and service. Frederick Buechner says when he defines vocation this way: the place where your deep gladness meets the world's deep needs. Those words are from Parker Palmer's book, Let Your Life Speak. The process he describes that I witnessed with Sophia is a natural one. It's organic. And I can't think of a better way to describe what All Souls is than a place where we encourage each other to grow into our authentic selfhood, whether or not it conforms to some image of who the world thinks we should or ought to be. And a significant part of my call here is to walk with you until you find those places where your deep gladness meets the world's deep needs. It's a deeply satisfying part of my call. I love doing it. It's a little bit like being a matchmaker or a yenta. And since many of us come from different religious traditions, different Christian denominations, and from no churches at all, it's important to know what we do not mean here when we talk about vocation or call and matchmaking, because we believe every one of us is born with original blessing, not with original sin. Sharing your gifts at All Souls really means sharing your true colors. It does not mean doing things to prove that you're worthy or good, because you are inherently worthy already. And it does not mean you need to become someone different or better than who you already are, because we're a community of all souls, not a community of all saints. And it does not mean doing what others expect of you or tell you you should do in order to be saved, because we already are held safe and whole and holy and beloved here. In our tradition, listening to be called means aligning ourselves with our gifts and accepting our limitations with understanding and compassion, and learning to live in integrity with and as our true selves. I'm really wondering this morning what color you've been trying to be, whose expectations you've been conforming yourself to, and what authentic colors you're being called to express in your life right now. It matters. It matters to the people who love you, it matters to this congregation, and it matters to the world. Right in the Gospel according to Luke, there's a story that affirms that our deepest call is to remember who we were born to be and to find a community of people who can support us in becoming that. This story happens at Passover time, another time of transition in the springtime, and Jesus is 12 years old in this story. Mary and Joseph are heading home back from their trip to Jerusalem when they notice Jesus isn't with them. You have to notice that I'm not the only first parent to forget their child somewhere. When they do notice that their son isn't with them, they go back, they turn around and they go back and they look for him, and it takes him 3 days to find Jesus in the temple with the elders talking Torah. So I imagine Mary finding her son and saying, "What in the world do you think you're doing? Why did you run away? Didn't you think for a moment how worried I would be?" And then Jesus distractedly answering, "Didn't you know I'd be at my Father's house?" Which is kind of funny because it sounds like something a 12-year-old would say. "How come you didn't know, Mom?" I imagine Mary must have been a little bemused and confused, a little bit the way Rick must have felt when he found Sophia so contentedly listening to the music. I appreciate this story because it lifts up some clues about what it feels like to be called. Of course, clues need to be decoded and deciphered in Scripture and in our own lives. But this story affirms what I've felt in my own life and witnessed in my children's lives and in the lives of members of this congregation. When we're moving closer to that place of alignment and integrity and true self, closer to that place where our deep gladness meets the world's deep need, our perception of time might be altered. We may experience increased clarity and capacity to focus. We may feel compelled to continue even though we don't know what the outcome is or will be, or even the outcome we want. And we may be pulled away from the demands of the world. I wonder if any of you have experienced that kind of a call, and if you're online, I hope you'll share those stories on the chat with each other too. I think we really inspire each other when we share those call stories with each other. And if you're curious this morning, if you're considering or open to becoming more of your true self, living more authentically, I'm going to invite you just to complete some sentences, like a fill in the blank. First thing that comes to mind. If you have a pencil, usually there's pencils in the back of the pews. You might write down your own answers. If you're on your computer, you might just type it in the chat. There's just that thing of getting those ideas out of our head onto paper that brings them alive. These questions are from The Artist's Way at Work by Julia Cameron. She writes, I like the way she describes call. She encourages all of us to find the joy we seek along with our path of authentic service in the world, because those two, joy and service and joy, they don't compete with each other, they go together. They depend on each other, really. Okay, so I see you grabbing your pencils. Here's the first one, and just the first thing that comes to mind. The person I remember who believed in me was, fill in the blank. The things I've learned that make me stronger are, the first one is the person I remember who believed in me was, and the second one is the things I've learned that make me stronger are. And the third and last prompt has 2 parts. I am most moved by blank. And most excited about. Thank you for participating with me. A calling is something that emerges from our own drive to express ourselves and to serve the world, Cameron writes. And psychologists agree. In a study about volunteerism from the American Psychological Association, researchers concluded that we volunteer for 5 reasons. We volunteer to more fully live our values in the world, to feel better about ourselves, to meet and learn people we otherwise would not meet or know or understand, to challenge ourselves so we'll grow, and because we care about the communities that we're a part of. This is the end of September.
Wow.
And the beginning of another church year, pandemic or not. All Souls is 100 years old. We are proud of our past, and despite the trials and tribulations of the pandemic, we are dreaming about our future. What are you called to do at this age and stage of your life? What are you called to do? Is there something for you to teach? Is there a talent for you to pass on to the next generation? Do you suspect that you have a gift that you have yet to nurture yourself? Sophia wandered into the big tent, and Jesus wandered into the temple, and you wandered in here. Why, I wonder? My sense from over the years is that you're here because you want to experience your authentic life, your true self, to experience presence and love in its fullness and to your fullest capacity. And because the needs of the world are endless and always pressing themselves upon us, the church exists to help us respond to those needs in creative, communal, sustaining, and sustainable ways, which is so much better than burning up with anger or giving up from frustration. So I think you're also here to experience joy and to serve the world and to find the place where those two aspects meet in your own life. So I have one ask and one invitation for you this morning. The ask is that you please complete our gifts and talents form. No matter how long or short a time you've been part of All Souls, I'm asking you to fill out a form and share who you are with us so we can bring you together in community. There are hard copies, printed copies in the foyer on the table. There is a link online in the chat, on Facebook, on Zoom, and I'm going to give you this little easy address, and you're going to hear it again later, allsouls.me/talents. It's amazingly easy when you enter that on your phone to fill out this gifts and talents form. I get to know so many of you, and then when I'm together, I realize that you're not meeting each other, which sometimes surprises me and sometimes makes me feel sad. I want you to know each other more. So let's use this time while we're still emerging from quarantine, and there are fewer of us together on Sunday mornings, to really get to know each other. Let's share our gifts more freely with each other and our church and our city. You know, I remember the day back in my early 30s, the day I dared to go back to church, and I went alone, and I was nervous and uncertain. And this is where that wandering led me. Right here. It may seem like a long way to wander to what you dream of becoming. It seems like a long way to wander from being a top executive at a corporation to arranging meals to be prepared and delivered to people's homes. But I love hearing longtime member Dick Leeser say how much more full of meaning his life has become since he started serving with our pastoral care teams some 15 years ago. Some calls are just that clear and compelling. So come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving, come. You are here for a reason, and now let's discover it together. May it be so. Amen.
Thank you for joining us. For 100 years, All Souls in Tulsa has been a beacon of this free faith. We offer our services and programs freely online for all those who are interested. You can help us to do this by making a one-time gift today or a reoccurring pledge. We really appreciate you joining us and being a part of helping us make All Souls in Tulsa what it is. Thank you.
wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving. Ours is no caravan of despair. Come yet again, come. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving. Ours is no caravan of despair. Come yet again, come. Tis a gift to be simple, 'tis a gift to be free, 'tis a gift to come down where we ought to be. And when we find ourselves in the place just right, we'll be in the valley of love and delight. When true simplicity is gained, to bow and to bend we shan't be ashamed. To turn, turn will be our delight, till by turning, turning we come round right. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving. Ours is no caravan